All right. Janice Dean essentially lost a bet over the temperature yesterday, and she had to buy us coffee. They finally arrived with coffee. America today is running on Dunkin'.
Exactly. Obviously, the line was a little long at Starbucks. Right? It could have been, I'm just saying. I was thinking more Starbucks.
I think she wanted to go to Dunkin'.
Right, okay.
All right, meanwhile, it's 28 minutes before the top of the hour. Jillian's got some news.
That's right. I'll read the news for a couple minutes. You guys can enjoy your coffee. How does that sound? Okay, go ahead. Let's get right to it now and get you caught up on some of your headlines. This should be a wake-up call. That bold statement coming from a California sheriff days after a massive weapons arsenal was found at the home of a student who made threats against his school.
There was a swift action that could possibly prevent another tragic event.
Anytime we can get a chance to prevent something like that from happening, I think we all come away from that very relieved.
A security guard at the school alerted police after overhearing the 17-year-old allegedly threatening to open fire. She killed her 5-year-old son, and now this New Jersey woman is suing, claiming she fell down and got hurt in court. Michelle Ledzinski says that during her 2016 trial, deputies, quote, moved her too fast while restrained, causing her to trip. She claims she may have permanent nerve damage to her wrists and ankles. Ledzinski is currently serving a 30-year sentence for the 1991 murder of Timothy Wiltsey. A new writing guide at Purdue University instructing students to avoid using words with man in them, well, because they're sexist. According to the guide, anyway, writing in a non-sexist manner is more ethical and, quote, if you write in a sexist manner and alienate much of your audience from your discussion, your writing will be much less effective. Instead, the guide suggests using words like humanity, people, or human beings. Political moderator for 800. Jeopardy host Alex Trebek has a new gig.
And now, here is the host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek.
Thank you, Johnny.
Trebek will moderate a debate for this year's Pennsylvania governor's race. He will question incumbent Democrat Tom Wolf and the winner of the GOP primary in an event in October. That's a look at your headlines. You know, I always say guys. I guess if I went to Purdue, I wouldn't be able to say guys.
Exactly.
Right?
You do not go to Purdue.
People, back to you.
You know what? You can always say y'all.
Y'all, back to you.
Everyone.
It's good
I tell you, I hate to say it, but I call girls guys. Like I'll say, how you doing, guys? Yeah.
People. People.
Now I can't do it.
How you doing, people?
There you go.
I'm saying y'all is a great word.
All right.
You adopt it up here.
Thank you, Jillian. Meanwhile, Janice is outside on the streets of New York City. Thanks for the coffee, JD.
Hi, you're welcome. Did you tell everybody that I lost a bet?
Yep.
Yep. To you?
Yep.
Okay.
We're going to show you, we're going to play the show back for you at the end.
Excellent. 78 degrees it was here in New York City. We busted some high heat temperatures yesterday all along the East Coast. 78 here in New York. By the way, at JFK, I think it was only 64. So if you take the average of that, I think I won. A quick look at your radar there. The problem is we have this front that's been stationary, bringing rain right now across New York City, and the temperature drop. And then we have the freezing rain and, unfortunately, the snow behind the front. That front is going to stall out, and that's why we have flood advisories in place across portions of East Texas up towards the Mississippi River Valley, the Ohio River Valley, and the Tennessee River Valley, where we could see inches of rain and the potential for flooding. So people need to be on alert. If you see a flood watch or a warning in your area behind that, that's where we're going to see the snow. So it's short-lived. 46 degrees is the daytime high. I mean, it just seems like a memory. 78 degrees here yesterday in New York. And it was 82 in D.C. if you have Kellyanne Conway coming up. I mean, it was incredible.
Well, actually, she's on the North Lawn of the White House, and we go there now. Thanks, JD.
Thank you, Janice.
Hey, Kellyanne, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
That was so powerful yesterday, the listening discussion at the White House there in the state dining room, because it wasn't a photo op. It was an actual discussion.
It was an actual discussion, a raw emotion, but also a lot of very considered, deliberative discussion about solutions that many of these affected families and students especially came ready to deliver to the president, to the vice president, and really the world. As the president said, the world was watching, and he takes very seriously everything that was said yesterday and presented to him. I'm really struck particularly by those high school students and their parents and educators who allowed them to have the microphone in their stead in many instances. They came here, obviously they've had a most harrowing and inexplicably difficult week, and yet they came here to actually try to reflect that week into public policy and what they feel can be done. I think some of the divisions and the dissension you heard among the participants yesterday very much reflect the same difference of opinion that we see all across our country. These are not easy solutions, but this is a necessary conversation, and this is a president who doesn't just listen, he acts. So I predict on his watch, things will change, and people will feel like school safety and public safety are much enhanced because he is the president.
What is the exact next step, Kellyanne? I know you're going to have a listening session, I guess, today again. There's a lot of diverse opinions yesterday, but you want to do two things. People were talking about guns, background checks, age, and the other one is going to be school safety, arming the teachers, getting armed guards there, and what they could do in terms of mental health. There's a lot of issues, a lot of opinions. How do you get some organization out of this and get it towards legislation?
That's the key here, and I'm sure everybody appreciates that this is ultimately a legislative process. The legislature makes the laws, the president executes them, but he's the one hosting these sessions here at the White House. Today it will be with local and state public safety individuals, and I think that's an incredibly important conversation to have also, because the president has made very clear it should be more difficult for those who should not have firearms to have them, and it should be easier for our law enforcement or the brave men and women in law enforcement to do the job that they set out to do in keeping our students safe. So these solutions will not happen overnight, but I can assure you that the time for listening and the time for action will come very quickly, because that's the way President Trump is. He's a man of action. And I think those who are focused only on the small discussion yesterday about the possibility of allowing some educators and administrators to be armed at some schools, to focus on that alone today is disingenuously covering the fuller discussion yesterday, and frankly it's disrespectful to the people who are in that room raising any number of different issues. You had a Columbine father who I know was on your network last night. You had two of the parents, and this morning you had two of the parents from Sandy Hook Promise. These are parents who suffered years and years ago. Columbine was 19 years ago, Sandy Hook over 5. And we're a nation that has been torn apart and has suffered the scourge of this particular affliction many times in the past. The 15-year-old Justin, who spoke yesterday and said, look, I'm 15 years old and Columbine happened 19 years ago. We're a generation that has lived in the shadow of this scourge, were basically what he was conveying. And we need to do something. So, Brian, to answer your question, those solutions don't come overnight. There was nothing definitive yesterday, but I thought it was such an important discussion to have because it was a combination of personal experience and public policy resolve.
Yeah, do you know how it works? Are these just suggestions? Is it state by state? They make their own rules for gun safety and what the teachers are allowed to do as far as conceal and carry? Is it? Well, do you know the rules on that or the laws?
Well, we have over 30 states that do have concealed carry laws, but that doesn't necessarily extend to teachers and educators. Right. I don't know the specifics of every single state.
Right.
Obviously, Congress can act with respect to federal law and has in the past. The president has made very clear that background checks are on his mind, that not having a lack of communication and gaps in the, if you will, the chain of communication between state and local officials, which we've seen in some of these instances. He took action just this week on bump stocks, and the Attorney General has responded. I read somewhere that there were about 50,000 public comments during that review period, and that is an engaged public. An enraged public becomes an engaged public when it comes to matters like this, and we fully respect and encourage that here at the White House. Then you have a president who's also talking about the age requirements for acquisition of firearms, but at the same time we understand that the finer points of public policy will come in due course. We just want that due course to not wait any longer. You heard those parents and those students yesterday, the educators yesterday too, and I was really happy that we had local educators and students here as well, because I think what was most important is, yes, people are angry and people are incredibly sad, but the resilience and the resolution. People kept saying this last week, this just feels differently this time. And I have to agree with that. It was clearly one of the saddest days since we arrived here in the 13 months we've been here at the White House. But it was also one of great resolution and purpose.
Well, let's hope so. Andrew Pollack, the guy who emotionally was talking about his daughter, Meadow, who was killed last week, he had a simple message. Put the politics aside. Have politics come into it later. Fix it now, and then argue about the politics.
I think Andrew Pollack spoke for a nation who surely agrees and mostly agrees with that, putting politics aside. Of course, there are different views on all of these issues. And I had occasion to speak to his son, Hunter, afterwards, and Meadows, a boyfriend there who's in the extreme right of your shot there. And again, clarity of thought and purpose. And I think Andrew spoke words for a grieving nation, but a nation that is very resolved to move forward. I thought some of the best, I was a professional focus group moderator for decades before I came here. And the fact is, I thought yesterday was one of those conversations where people have thought about this so deeply and without the clouded judgment of special interest and donor money and politics, that they come with this clarity of thought and this decisive purposefulness that really makes us all stand and listen and attention. I think it benefits us all that you have a non-politician here in the White House behind me, because he can see this with a certain clarity that others perhaps cannot.
Yeah, but normal politicians would not want to take the risk of an unscripted situation in something as raw as that, and this president has brought us there
and the cameras
about 4
were on the whole
times.
time, too. Everybody should appreciate that, and you'll see that again today in the public safety. I think that's incredibly important. You saw it last month with the immigration meeting, the bipartisan meeting in the cabinet room for 55 minutes. You saw it yesterday for fully over an hour, and we thank all the networks for covering it. Thank you.
He had no commercials, but we do. Thanks, Kellyanne Conway. We're going to take a short time out and come back with more. You're watching Fox and Friends, unless I'm really lost.